Hello, Captain VFC here, and no, you do not need to adjust your sets. I am indeed going to build a tank. I know you may be thinking, but you mostly do planes, right? And, well, yes. But I wanted to pick this up for a couple of reasons. One is I mostly do planes, and it's nice to do something a little bit different. I also very rarely do vintage classics or any old tool. I much prefer doing something new than wrestling with something old. And the other reason is because in the latest Airfix sale, so end of August, this was very cheap, £4.89, and there's a 10% discount on that as well for club members, which I am. They were also doing a deal with a flat £15 off if I spent a certain amount, as well as a chance to win a lot of points in a sweepstake as well. So I had an incentive to make an order, and this was so cheap, well, I thought it would be silly not to. Okay, so is this worth the £4.89 that it was sold for? Let's have a little look. The artwork on this dates back to 1962, so the box leads me to believe. With the Airfix Vintage Classic range, they do reuse the original artwork where possible. Other than the artwork, we just have the title, Joseph Stalin JS-3. The Joseph Stalin refers to the name of the tank, obviously named after the man himself, and JS is the initialization of that. 3 being the third in this series of tanks. You will often see it referred to as the IS-3, because if you take Joseph but put an I in front of it, which is closer to Russian but not actually Russian, then it looks like Iosif Stalin. But then you're kind of bastardizing both Cyrillic and English, and Joseph Stalin makes more sense, JS-3, but whatever. We're not going into language, even though it's awkward when you've got a Soviet weapon. This man here seems to be very brave, because if the turret turns, the gun could completely knock him unconscious, which is a little bit unfortunate, but hopefully the turret won't turn. And this guy behind the back of the Vintage Classics logo appears to be sneaking around a building which has been mostly destroyed, so good luck, have fun. The product code is down the bottom right, a 01307V, V for Vintage Classics, and it's 1/76th scale, although I'm under the impression that these tanks were rather crude, and so the scale is an approximation. But hey, whatever, I don't plan to do anything specific with it, no dioramas or anything, so 1/76th, 1/72nd, I don't really care. On the grey edge, we have lots of warnings. We also have the Hornby Hobbies official product badge, the address, and not much else. Oh no, it does tell you down here indeed that it is a 1962 tooling and illustration, pack design 2021, made in India. Both shop edges are the same and look like this. The upside down red edge has a little bit of information about the tank, not very much, some basic dimensions, a little diagram of what it should look like, and it's a skill level 2, which, considering it's such a small kit, suggests there might be some resistance, shall we say. And 1 flying hour if, like me, you are a member of the club and want a free kit every now and again. The colour callout is on the back, and straight away I would like to highlight something which is wrong. So it's not often I find a mistake this early into looking at a kit, but you see 3 colours. Number 30 dark green is the overall colour, 33 black for the tyres, and gunmetal 53 for the tracks and gun. Well, they don't have rubber tyres. JS3s are horrifically loud when they trundle along with most Soviet tanks, because they didn't have rubber tracks. So that would actually be gunmetal. So they could have saved themselves a colour by just emitting the black and having gunmetal around the edges of the wheels. Further to that, that does not look like number 30. Now, I don't think number 30 would look right for the tank anyway, but that does not look right for number 30. So you can ignore that. You can ignore that. You'd need gunmetal and a green of choice. But on the plus side, the decals are cartograph. Okay, so inside the box we have all of the parts in a plastic bag. The instructions, there we go, there's the decal sheet, just for. Probably fine, don't know, don't care. The same, actually no, an enlarged history of the tank relative to the side of the box. Your usual warnings. Your usual icons, and a modern rendition of the historic 1960s instructions, which are essentially Part 1, butt ton of wheels, Part 2, build a tank, Part 3, final bits and tracks, Part 4, gun. And on the back, nothing. Now I know that may seem like an incredibly quick look at the instructions, but to be honest, there's so little to look at, I don't care. Straight away, I've noticed we have a casualty. This has fallen off of the sprue. At the time that this kit was produced, it was standard to have a sprue layout like this with the parts extending out. These days you tend to get a frame around them which protects them, but of course uses more plastic. So not the end of the world, but does indicate a slight crudeness in the way that these are produced. I've noticed actually that there looks like there's another one, because on here, which is sprue nameless, on here you've got the turret, big saucepan type thing. You then have two parts here, parts 51 and 55, but there is only one, to the best of my knowledge, there is only one part that is off. Let's have a look at the instructions again. Right, so part 51 is the rear of the hull, which is fine. That's this bit. That obviously would have gone like that. And it wasn't part 55, it was part 56. Part 56 is part of the gun mantlet. Well, that seems rather important. I need to double check to make sure that I've actually got that. So, good news. The part has definitely not been swallowed up by the carpet monster. The bad news is I've gone over the footage, and when I opened the pack, there was absolutely no sign of that gun mantlet part 56 that is missing. So that is a casualty from before the kit arrived, or logically before it was sealed in the bag, so before it even left India. So someone in India has my part 56. I'd quite like it back, please. I paid for that. This does somewhat hamper the build. On the ground of a gun mantlet that holds the gun in place is quite important. But never mind, we shall soldier on for now. Let's take a look at the rest of the kit. This is the other part that was loose. You've got the gun cradle on here, as well as what I assume is access to the engine. Detail actually looks really nice considering how old this is. We have the turret top with pretty much everything moulded onto it. The famous pike nose of the JS-3. The floor. They've moulded the part number onto the chassis there, which I assume means it will be covered by wheels. And speaking of wheels, here they are. I absolutely love wheels on tanks. Indeed. There we go. And then we have the rubber band type tracks, which actually look all right. Again, not something that I like, but I thought I'd make an exception for the price. Right, and so there we go. I now need to work out what to do with the missing part and assemble the tank, I guess. So, a quick recap in case you missed it. The tooling date for this is 1962. 67 parts is what it says on the box. There is, of course, only one decal scheme, and whilst I paid £4.89 for it at time of recording, which is October 2024, the recommended retail price is £6.99. Construction begins with what I assume to be a 6-decade-old error. That part there on the instructions that said 50, well, to me that looks like a 2 and part 20. It's also visible on the outside of the tank when it is completed, but hey, whatever. It's pretty clear that it's meant to be this part, which is obviously the chassis for all of the wheels, which is where most of this construction is going to be fair. Each axle is comprised of 2 wheels, and then there's the return rollers as well. There is no way of really lining them up using the parts. You have to use your eyeball. Don't forget you do need them to be aligned because, of course, the runners for the tracks is what goes in the grooves between the 2 wheels. So a little care needed, but nothing out of the ordinary and nothing that should really challenge the modeller. With 6 axles on each side, the 3 return rolling pairs, and the gear wheels and return roller as well. No, hang on, is it return roller? You know what I mean, the non-powered wheel that pushes the tracks back round. You can see how more than half of this kit, in terms of the parts, is just wheels. Still better than a Churchill though. I do recommend at this stage not fitting the drive sprocket. I can't remember if I put the idler, and I just remember it's named the idler as well. No, I did fit the idler, I believe. There I am gluing it in right now, but not the drive sprocket, because that is helpful to leave later when you are fitting the rubber tracks. So that's the only thing which is omitted at this stage. But with all of the many wheels done, the chassis, both sides, can be fitted to the hull top, and the back and bottom then go on. So the entire tank is now essentially assembled just from gluing the wheels on, and then the box that forms the hull. Up to this point, there have been no real fit issues as long as the wheels are aligned, and it only took maybe half an hour to get to this stage. So this is absolutely a very basic kit to build, will not take you long at all. And there's also very little external detail to stick on the top of the hull. You've got the driver's hatch, which for some reason is a separate part, even though there is no interior detail, so you're unlikely to have it open. And these fuel tanks, which are bolted to the outside. They had a horrible seam line right down the middle, and I tried to sand it off, and then realised I was wasting my time on a 6-decade-old kit that I didn't really care about anyway. So there is going to be a bit of a groove on there, and I don't care. In case anyone wants to comment about the dangers of strapping your fuel supply to the outside of a tank, it's diesel. It doesn't catch fire, and you probably are not going to be sticking your backside to the enemy. So it seemed to work. On to the turret next, and with no gun mantelet, it is just a case of plopping the turret onto the hull and gluing in the hatches, which I assume is for the commander and the gunner. The loader will have to wait patiently in line to get out of the burning tank if necessary. On to painting then, and the entire tank was given a coat of black primer before I get out the interior green. I just happened to be painting some RAF aircraft with interior green, so I used that to do a bit of pre-shading. And you may be wondering why I'm doing pre-shading and why you've never seen me do any pre-shading before. Well, it's one of the reasons why I bought this kit. I just thought I'd mess about with it and see what I could come up with. So this is my first attempt at pre-shading a tank. And once everything was suitably and seemingly randomly splodged with the interior green, I could get out the main body colour. And for this, I've chosen the AK 3rd Generation Finnish Command Green. Basically, I bought this set of AK paints for World War II Finnish Air Force, and I wanted to try them. Now, they're formulated for brush, so I've just thinned it down with some water, and I've made it particularly thin so that I can go over that pre-shading that I've done. Little bit of feedback to myself would be I probably should have pre-shaded in a lighter colour, because they're actually quite similar. And in case you're wondering why I chose a Finnish colour rather than anything Soviet, well, it's just what I had available, and I wanted it to look notably different from anything Allied. The vast collection that I have is Allied. Vast majority of the collection I have is Allied, and so having something which isn't, as long as it's not in an Allied colour, I think will be okay. And I quite like the result. I do quite like this shade of green. The colour discrepancy that I noticed on the instructions has now been rectified, so number 53 has just been painted over all of the not tyres, they're just the edge of the wheels. In fact, it's not even Humbrol 53, I just mixed some black and silver. And then the drive sprocket can be assembled. This is made to turn, so it's just a pin, as you saw, through 2 halves. And then the tracks can be carefully wrapped around there. And I then added a touch of super glue onto the bottom of the wheels and the part of the track where they join. Now, the guidance from Airfix always used to be getting a soldering iron or a heated screwdriver or something like that and melting the two together. I've never been that comfortable with that idea, and I've never really liked rubber tracks at all. But this is the best that I could come up with, and by putting them on the bottom, I figured, if necessary, I could just chuck some mud over the join, and then you'd be none the wiser. Although, as you're going to see shortly, I haven't actually yet weathered this. I wanted to show off the product first, and this is going to be a test bed for weathering as and when I get round to it. And I don't think there was any problem with doing the track join this way anyway. One other thing that I did do but I didn't film was go over most of the tracks with the same mix of black and silver that I had done for the wheels. This just gives it a more natural finish rather than the rather plasticky, rubbery thing that it would otherwise be. In any event, that is more or less it. Just some tidying up on the drive sprockets with some green paint, which again I did off camera, and we have the finished result. And this only really took about an afternoon of chucking together, and it was a good way of testing new paints and just getting used to making armour again. So, let's look at the finished product. Alright, so there are two things which stand out and which people are probably going to ask. So the first of it is, why didn't I put the decals on? I didn't want to. I don't like them. I think it looks silly, and there are so many JS3s that are just plain and displayed like this, obviously with a gun, that I didn't want these horrible bright white circles with red stars on. Honestly, I just don't like them, so I didn't put them on. And the other is, why have I left it without the gun? Why haven't I been in touch with the Airfix spares department to get myself a replacement mantlet? Well, I have. After pretty much no exchange, just one email sent asking for a part, this is what was sent, just the part. So, with the mantlet now in tow, it's time to get this tank sent away to the factory to be repaired so that it can go back into the front line, armed and ready. So there we go, the actual finished product, gun intact as well. Quick mention about the Airfix spares then. It was very easy to get in touch with them. Just send them an email with the production batch and everything is fine. They sent a part in about 10 days or something like that. So it wasn't too bad. I still don't think it should be necessary. I bought this because I just wanted to chuck it together in an afternoon and ended up having to wait with it sitting around for, nearly 2 weeks or something like that. So, yeah, it's not ideal. I would just prefer to have an actual model in a box, you know, what you pay for. But at least the spares department is there if, like me, you have had this problem. Regarding the kit itself, let's be honest with ourselves, it's a bit crap, isn't it? I mean, it's from the 1960s. It would have been based on pictures of the JS3 at best, so it looks about right. It's a basic representation. The only people I think would really buy this would be somebody like myself who's just chucking it in to bulk up an order and just want something to throw together in an afternoon. Or if you're a particular fan of it from the 1960s, you have memories of building this kit and you really want to experience it again, then fair enough. Or if you're just a wheel enthusiast and you just really like assembling Soviet wheels, go for it. But I can't really recommend it for anything more than £5 or £6 because it just isn't very detailed. Everything just looks a little bit flat. But there is, of course, two other reasons why you may want to buy it. One is because you just want to, fair enough, not going to stop you. And the other is as a simple basis for some weathering, and that is ultimately what I intend to do with this in the future. I wanted to chuck it together because I had an afternoon free, but I will be attempting to weather this, probably not on camera. It's just a throwaway model that I don't really care about. So there we go, it was fun. And isn't that all that matters? Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit notification bell if you're into that sort of thing, or you could become a channel member like these people on screen who help support the channel directly with a small payment each month. And I shall leave it at that. Enjoy the rest of your time. Good day.